Hello and welcome to the Knowledge Facebook Lives. I'm Tom from the communications team. Thank you for joining me today. We have a wide variety of knowledge at Kiel, so whilst we're in quarantine, we thought we'd get some of our academics live on Facebook to answer some of your questions. And today I am joined by Teaching Fellow in Marketing, Rachel Lee. Hello, Rachel.
Hello, Tom.
How are we?
Very well, thank you. Embracing the new challenges that we have here.
Now, we were just saying about your background. I thought you were out in the lovely sunshine, and then I got confused because it's actually not that sunny and not that clear blue skies.
No, I'd like to make you all jealous that I'm in some exotic location, but all I can say is it's a nice blue painted background in a room that we have in the house. Nothing more than that.
Well, it nearly fooled me. So, Rachel, do you want to give us a quick background into what your area of expertise is at Kiel?
Okay, so obviously I'm a teaching fellow in marketing, and I teach contemporary retail environments for third years, brands and branding, services marketing, and consumer behaviour. So very much focused on the psychology of why we choose to buy things, and also the environments and those social practices that impact it. I've done a lot of some previous research on nostalgia marketing, which I used as part of my MA, which obviously was particularly interesting, again, in that side of our consumption behaviour. So very much focused on why we shop and what influences us, which is obviously very fascinating at this time as a lot of rich data starts to come out.
Yeah, so yesterday non-essential shops reopened, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. So if you do have any questions around the retail landscape and especially what's currently happening, do comment them below and I'll ask them as we go along. But it goes without saying that COVID-19 has impacted pretty much all aspects of how we live, and a large part of that is going shopping. So can you tell us a bit about how retailers have been affected as the pandemic started to take hold in the UK?
Yeah, as you say, this has affected a lot of our daily lives, and it's affected industries in all amounts of different ways. And retailers have had that real shock of suddenly their livelihoods and their ways of running businesses completely just put on hold. And so, in terms of how they've been affected, we're starting to see the impact in terms of job retention. We're seeing some job losses and store closures, which, this is a sector that was already facing some challenges as consumers start to move to shopping online. And this has just been another blow, really, and particularly for those operating both on bricks and clicks formats, so the physical store retailers. Also, in terms of that shopping online, so whilst consumers previously had the choice, it's now obviously with COVID-19 become a necessity, and we saw shoppings which are high of 30.7 by the Office of National Statistics in April, which is a massive leap up, even though we already were seeing that growth, just because there were no other choices. Obviously, with some of the challenges as well, is maintaining that staff in the hope of when stores reopened. So a lot of furloughing has occurred for a lot of big retailers. John Lewis, Primark, a total of 1.6 million staff in retail have been affected by this. So, consumers have suddenly lost some of those favourite retailers in terms of being able to just go and visit the store. And retailers have had to manage carefully how they look after their staff in the hope of when this unlocking occurred and started yesterday.
And so non-essential shops have now reopened. Well, they've been allowed to reopen, and a lot of them have reopened. How do you think they'll overcome the challenges the new challenges anyway, the new ways of shopping? How will retailers adapt and change to that?
There's no underestimating how big a challenge this is that they are facing. Luckily, in a way, because we've had essential retailers already going through this process, there has been the opportunity to see how that's working in practice. It's all very well suggesting these changes, but each retailer is different. Each store layout, each level of online channels that they have varies. So, in terms of overcoming the challenges, we know that we can put in some social distancing measures in terms of reconfiguring the store layout. Putting up screens. Again, there's probably likely to be at times a little bit of a lag time as those facilities are dispatched to the retailers. And also, it's what can the consumers do and customers do to work with retailers. These are challenges that face both sides of this sort of retail partnership that we engage in. And there's going to be challenges in terms of how do we embrace and enjoy our shopping experience, but how do retailers manage that? This is very much a case of management to optimize their stores. And a big part of that, as I say, is really thinking about the store layout. And this is going to vary for different types of retailers. And it's almost a case of going back to the drawing board and saying, okay, what do we have, and what can we do to make sure that this is as free flowing for customers, but so that they can shop safely and feel that sense of security and trust from retailers that they are delivering on those government guidelines.
And you sort of mentioned the layout of stores and how that will affect how we shop. A lot of stores, a great deal of attention is put into how they're laid out and how you move around a store. Is that likely to impact sales because we've now got to have different measures in place of how we can move around the shop?
Yeah, in retail you have very different types of formats that you do to in relation to the type of products you sell, and also what you're trying to optimize in sales. I mean, maximizing retail sales per retail square foot is a big thing, and now that's coming under sort of question in terms of it's not just about sales, it's safety now. So yeah, a lot of store layouts where they had traditionally been maybe free flowing, so particularly in say some of our high street stores, our Primarks, our fashion retailers, where it allows the customer to be able to move freely and browse at leisure. And they're going to have to now start adopting more what is traditionally associated with retailers like supermarkets, where it works more on a sort of grid layout, racetrack kind of layout. So you sort of start a bit like a glorified game board. So you start on your starting point and you progress through without that much deviation, and that's going to affect in terms of how do we place our products, how do we remove some of those, what would be maybe some of our bargain bins and our impulse buying containers. They will probably need to be considered to be removed to optimize that flow. So yeah, the store layout that would normally suit best their products is going to have to change, just to ensure that the amount of customers can be optimized to get through, but at a steady pace that both customers feel they have enough time to browse, but also that they don't take too long browsing as well, as they have to, so that other customers can come through. We've already experienced and seen queuing systems, so it's a big challenge, and will vary depending on the size of the retail space you're working with.
Yeah, and we've seen screens put up, signage, new wayfinding. Will that impact, small businesses? Will they struggle to adapt to that, or do you think that is everyone in the same boat, or do you think that small businesses will have a harder time adapting to the changes than, say, a large retailer?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can put this on a scale in terms of the bigger retailers have the challenge of probably the quantity of customers they need to get through, but they have the benefit of having that bigger retail space to move people through. If we think about even our local high streets or some of those smaller towns and cities that have smaller retail spaces, they are very, very much restricted as to what they can do with it. So yeah, they will definitely face. There will be limitations. Is it one in, one out? We've seen that, and you may have experienced it yourself in any of the smaller stores, is that you are waiting much longer time to get in. Also, it's not just about what is there in store, but smaller retailers in terms of how do they now, if they haven't necessarily got have not previously been as well set up for their online facilities and warehouse facilities, they've got to face that challenge now and invest quickly into optimizing their online capacity and warehouse facilities, which obviously we know that bigger retailers have already been well implementing this. So all they need to do is expand that. Whereas for some retailers, it'll be the first time of really facing the challenges of how do you work with online retailing.
And do you think that people will want to go back to the high streets? Do you think that they'll want to go and shop in person, or have habits been, as you said, we've all been kind of forced to shop online, and whereas in the past we had that choice? And do you think that people have now experienced the online shopping world, that more people might stay and are happy with that and will stay online shopping?
I mean, based on the news that was coming through yesterday, I think that was a really positive sign for retailing in the sense that people, as soon as those shops start to be open, there's the opportunity to then go back and experience that in store. There is only so far that online can take certain types of products, and particularly the fashion sector has struggled in trying to bridge that gap by being just purely online, because there are just some things that we can't experience in the same way. We can't see what the clothes look like. We can't have some of that social shopping online in the same way. So, I think we often underestimate the potential that the high street has. But I think we're probably going to see a more blended approach, even more so in the sense that we already know that there's been this gradual change to sort of bricks and clicks retailers, a heavier emphasis on the clicks aspect, just because there won't be a chance to get all the customers through, and they won't be able to shop in the same way, at least for the period of time as it stands at the moment. They won't be able to fully experience how they were used to shopping. So, and those who have perhaps never done so much online shopping previously may be newly converted to say, actually, this has worked out really well, it's convenient, they know the sort of things that I normally buy. So, I think our shopping habits will have changed, but I by no means think this is, the end of the high street, because there is just some things that in-store can only deliver, and that online is yet to replace.
And obviously we saw people camped outside places like Primark yesterday and queuing for hours to get in. Do you think this will? Do you think people will continue doing this, or do you think people will relax a little bit and we'll start to see an approach, a new normal approach forming?
I think that that's just a sign of the fact that people haven't been able to have that experience for such a period of time. So I think this is probably a little bit of a shocking peak to that people are embracing. But I don't think it will remain at that level. I mean, we saw this just prior to the lockdown taking place, that we had obviously a lot of sort of bulk buying and panic buying. And obviously that then eased as we adapted to the world in which we were moving into. And I think the same will happen. So whilst we've got this peak at the minute, and admittedly part of that will be motivated by the fact that they know retailers have had to hold on to stock for such a long period of time, that they naturally are going to have to discount this in order to clear it through to get the next stock through as we reach the end of certain seasons. As I say, particularly with fashion, toys, anything that is so seasonally based, there is that pressure to get it through. So customers are not fools by any means. They know that the retailers need them, and they know that they need to clear their stock. So there is that motivation of knowing they're going to get perhaps some bargain buys that they weren't previously getting.
And what really fascinated me was how a place like Primark didn't have any online presence. So as soon as lockdown came in, they essentially had no business left. Do you think that an online presence is now going to be a sort of a mandatory part to any business, and we'll see more businesses who don't have an online presence start to get something in place?
Yeah, I mean, I think for any retailer, this is showing them that, have a plan A and make sure you definitely have that plan B, because you just never know what's coming on the horizon. And to have the opportunity to optimize two routes means that you are far more flexible to deal with it when challenges come, which can come at any time in any form. And, I think there's a lot of retailers that have held off on doing that, and there are benefits obviously to doing that. You then make sure you optimize that in-store experience. You have the better opportunity to encourage browsing and impulse buying, which are perhaps harder always to do with online retailing. So I think, you know, as part of retailer strategies going forward, they'll be thinking critically, okay, what do we really need to do to make sure that we are now perhaps capturing more of those customers who don't feel that they can come and store, or it's actually not safe for them to come and store. You don't want to be losing your customer base because you're not thinking and flexibly and adaptably.
Yeah, and so have we seen the full impacts yet? Are there still businesses that might struggle and will continue to struggle, and we've not seen the full force of lockdown's effect on the retailers yet?
I think this is going to be a case of watch the space and see, very much a ripple effect. So, you know, retailers have had to be incredibly patient, and there's already been some losses. So we know that there are retailers such as Monsoon, Debenhams, the restaurant industry, Frankie's and Benny's, that are already realising because it's been such a long period, they just don't have the cash flow to maintain that amount of loss of sales. Can't make those sales up. They have been now lost. So yes, I think the long-term implications is there are going to be more big-name retailers struggling in the coming months and years. This is already a sector that's lost big-name retailers, and so there are going to be other implications, not just from that point of view, but I say how we then choose to shop. We have realised that perhaps a little bit of saving money for the uncertainty of the future, a level of stockpiling. So, on the nature of how we shop, do we go in and just buy as and when? If you've got a queue for an hour or half an hour to get into a store, you're not going to go in there in the same way that you would previously, where you could just nip in and get something. So, yeah, the sort of the aftershock effect of this, I think, is still going to be rumbling around for some time. However, I would say that retailers are fairly resilient and innovative in the way that they think around problems, and we're already seeing retailers trying to think about how can they make sure that customers want to still shop with us and can get the items that they're looking for with relative ease. So we've seen it with, considering that idea of, do we create a virtual queue management system so that customers don't have to wait? I mean, we've been lucky, really, in a sense, of this period of time, that the weather has been quite good. As we reach the winter season, they're going to need to think about how do we make sure our customers aren't queuing outside and getting wet or cold. So there's going to be, I would say, some new innovations coming through following this process.
And those big businesses that do go under and don't survive this, are we likely to see buyouts taking place from other businesses that then try and merge the two, or do you think they'll just go under and that will be it? We'll never see those names again, like Monsoon and places like that.
It's a funny thing, retail, because we do see big names going, but they don't always go completely. So even though we lost several years ago, obviously VHS, what they did was then moved online. So they've not gone. They're just not in the same type of presence. We do see, obviously, the opportunity for merging. The problem is unlike previously, where there was the opportunity to buy out, all retailers have been affected in sort of the same sort of way. They've all faced the same challenge, unlike before, where it may be specific and more sort of smaller problems to deal with. And so there may be then bigger retailers that could absorb other businesses. I think there is a definite challenge of, are people in a position, are retailers in a position to actually do those mergers with the current situation they've had, or do they need to focus purely on their businesses before they try and take on other retail formats?
And what broader impact do you think the pandemic will have on the retail industry?
I think there's going to be an effect, both obviously from a retailer and a consumer point of view. I think as we start to face the challenges of job losses, we've seen daily reports of how many jobs are being lost. So this is going to have an implication on terms of how much sort of disposable cash people have to spend and enjoy the leisure activity of retailing. So that's going to be one of those factors that may change again as we face 2008, that people save rather than spend. And in terms of if we have that opportunity to then go and shop, leisure activity that it was. You know, if you're having to have that social distance and you're having to be aware of how many people are coming are allowed in store, then people won't be able to enjoy it in the same way. And those who enjoy it as a social experience, social distance is actively telling you not to enjoy it that way. It's going to be a challenge in terms of people getting comfortable with the new norm, and this will, I think, be a new norm that we face for some time, as this continued concern and threat exists with coronavirus. For layouts, there are going to be some changes that need to take place. So this is, that's going to change the nature in which we browse. And who does the shopping is going to be a question. So, if people are needing to stay indoors and we've got vulnerable consumers who are no longer able to go and do the shopping themselves, the nature of who is shopping and how retailers appeal to them and help them if they're buying not only for themselves, perhaps buying on behalf of somebody else, then there may be a case of how do we accommodate that? What deals can we do to try and appeal to these people who are shopping? So I think, there's going to be some really interesting changes that happen. Some will be probably for the better. I mean, there's some interesting innovations coming out already for the fashion industry in terms of how do we help customers still buy the clothes they want without having to try them on, because obviously there are concerns around that try before you buy experience, which we are used to. That's no longer able to happen because of the quarantining. So, what technology can we utilise? And there's some really interesting innovations coming out in terms of getting the same opportunities that they would have had previously to the pandemic. Embrace that so that we're still having an enjoyable shopping experience.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Rachel, for that. It's really fascinating and a really interesting time for retailers across the UK and around the world. I'm guessing for a lot of other countries as well. So thank you very much for that. Thank you to everyone who joined and watched. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.